Hello there. Welcome along to episode 73 of Adventures in Pop. My name is still Simon Jacobs, and you are incredibly welcome. What's on today's programme? Well, a couple of things. One is going to have a very brief, and I mean really brief, look at a report by a DJ called Jaguar Bingham. She's a Radio 1 DJ, does lots of dance music stuff. She's written a really good report, which is basically looking at the kind of role and representation of women and non-binary artists in dance music, and it's rather sobering. We'll come to that in just a second. The other thing, maybe our main course this evening, is to have a look at the brand new Goldhawk Foxes single, which is out right now as I speak. It came out like minutes ago. It's called Str8 Up Down. It's damn good, and it's the fourth of the Goldhawk Foxes tracks. So should we start with this report, just very briefly, because I'm not going to go into the whole thing, but I've heard about it on the radio a couple of times. It's been in the press. It's got some good attention, and it's a report by this one. I'm just finding. I'm actually going to read a couple of bits from it so that I don't misrepresent it in any way. It's a really interesting report, which is about how dance music essentially has, become the domain of white men who really do dominate the whole genre. And when we're talking, the genre, we're talking about every aspect of it. We're talking about records that get made. We're talking about DJs. We're talking about clubs. We're talking about festivals. We're talking about on the radio, right across the board. An incredibly serious kind of lack of diversity and representation of women and non-binary artists, and DJ Jaguar is saying this has got to change, and I it's very hard to to argue. It's pretty compelling, and let me just give you a little flavour of what she's talking about. It's interesting actually also because she rightly points out that dance music, in particular dance music, came from the kind of the clubs of Chicago and Detroit and New York in the 70s and 80s. And it was music that came from, minorities who felt disenfranchised by, the world. And this was music for them, by them. It was a form of escapism. And it was definitely, to be specific, it was about Black and brown communities, and it was about LGBTQ plus communities as well, all working together in Chicago and New York and Detroit, as I say. I mean, started in America, came here very quickly. But now, if you look at it, 30, 40 years later, we're talking about a genre that is dominated by people like Calvin Harris and David Guetta and Fatboy Slim, etc., etc., and many, many others, white men. And, what that does then is create a situation where it feels like it's a genre that is for white people, or or for men, and it becomes very difficult to kind of break that down. So she's written this report called Progressing Gender Representation in UK Dance Music. It's quite serious, which she describes as a deep dive into gender disparity amongst artists, and she's particularly looking at the scene in this country, in the UK. And if we start by just picking out some of the stats that she discovered, it's pretty, it's not good. As I say, sobering, I think it is. So she found a lack of diversity in dance music's live ecosystem. So we're talking about on lineups and behind the scenes, and how women, and even more so trans and non-binary people, fall victim to not fitting into the boys' club. So she analysed data from the official charts company and found that we're talking about right now, this year, last year, 5% of dance songs were made exclusively by women and non-binary artists. And actually, when it came to what people heard on the radio, that 5% dropped to 1%. So that's 1 in 100 dance records made by women. I mean, that's pretty terrible, isn't it? It's almost like somehow society has decided that women are okay in, you know, in pop music, but they've got to be doing a certain type of music. Otherwise, you know, it's not really, dance music isn't really theirs, is it? It's all wrong. Anyway, she talks about festival lineups in 2022. She found that 28% of artists at festival lineups, you know, this year are female or non-binary. At the really big festivals, that's more likely to be 15%, she says. And even then, it's the guys who are at the top of the bill and the women at the bottom of the bill. So that's not great, is it? Not good. Now, she's got a solution that she comes up with about having an inclusivity ride, is what she calls it, which is a kind of a booking contract clause that says that the artist will only play on a lineup if there is at least one other woman or trans or non-binary person or person of colour playing alongside them. And if everyone had one, especially those dominant male DJs, it would really accelerate change. So in other words, for every man that you're booking, you've also got to book a woman, trans, non-binary or person of colour alongside, sitting with them, being with them, on that bill with them. So the big guys will still get booked, but immediately that lineup will become more diverse. And when it becomes diverse, her argument is, and I'm sure it's right, is that that would then attract a completely different audience in. And she talks a little bit about how difficult it is, you know, functioning as a woman DJ in the club scene, which is mostly male and can frankly be pretty hostile. And it, you know, you're walking into a club at a certain time of night and you could find yourself being the only woman there. I mean, I can imagine it's not good, and it's not inclusive, and it's not welcoming, and it's pretty intimidating, and, you know, therefore it's not so likely to happen, is it? It's such an interesting point, because the other thing that it's not mentioned in this article, but I mean, you know, you just think about it, is how many times do we hear dance music that does have a female voice, but it's Calvin Harris featuring, it's so-and-so, you know, big guys featuring a woman who gets a name check, but it's not really hers. You know, she's just the guest who's doing, you know, but actually her contribution is really important to it. I mean, I'm thinking about my clubbing days, which was kind of the noughties most of all, in Vauxhall in London. Don't go there. I mean, you know, do go there, but you won't find much clubbing. I remember loving music by Freemasons. I mean, that was one of my particular favourites. I bought the album, which I think was called Unmixed by Freemasons. And on that album, it had the most fantastic track, Uninvited, which was written by Alanis Morissette, but the dance hit had vocals by Bailey Zook, but it was on the Freemasons made it. She was the guest vocalist on the same album. Rain Down Love, Seda Garrett. Actually, I love her voice. Really underrated, but again featuring. But it's a Freemason song. There's more on this one album, which I really did love. Love on My Mind, featuring Amanda Wilson, etc., etc. But I mean, there's tons of it, and it still goes on today. So, you know, when are we ever going to get the other way around? When it's, you know, it's going to be a female collective who've made a record and they're featuring some bloke at the front. I can't ever remember that ever happening. So, you know, we know that there's an issue there, and she's absolutely right to point it out. And yeah, good on her. So yeah, that needs to change. I hate the idea that there's, you know, that there's certain genres that are okay for some people but not others. I mean, it's just ridiculous, isn't it? This is music, for goodness sake, in 2022. So look, let's park that. But I just wanted to just raise it, bring it to your attention. And instead, we're going to talk about the fourth Goldhawk Foxes single called Str8 Up and Down, as I say, out already. It's rather marvellous. And what I want to say about this, other than I'm going to give you a fun video, which is my kind of slight alternative to the lyrics video, coming up in a few minutes' time. Stick around for that. What can I say? This is the fourth. I think if you listen to the 4 Goldhawk Foxes singles, back to back, they're beginning to have a feel to them. They're beginning to kind of, have a sound, which I think is I like it. I mean, I think it's uniquely us. I've probably said this before, but I think it's something quite different from what I would be doing on my own. I think it's quite different from what CJ would be doing, and that's the whole point of coming together and doing collaboration. So I'll pick out a couple of bits of this song, and a few things I think are worth really pointing out. I think it's a very light, poppy, fun, summery kind of track. The rhythm section is really nice. There's a collection of different samples that are doing different things, and when you put them together, it just creates this. It's a very R&B feel, and it's not something that I would normally have probably done on my own tracks, but it's great. I'm quite proud of that. That sounds really good. Let's hear that. There's a really nice bit of instrumental that happens about a third of the way through the song, which is just a couple of instruments kind of coming together. They're quite separated, so you've got a synth in one speaker and a kind of echoey guitar in the other. That's worth having just a little listen to. I don't quite know how that came about. It's nice. And then the other thing about this song, and it's worth pointing out, is this is a song that has loads of lyrics, and I can't take very much credit for that. I think CJ came up with the vast majority of these words, and there are a lot of words. So he's singing it, quite a lick as you go through it, and there's tons. Just trying to get all the lyrics down for the lyrics video was quite a major exercise. So there's a lot of words, and he's racing through them. Even some words that, when I heard him kind of rehearsing it with me, and we were going through just making sure that we knew what bit goes where, what point do we, launch into the chorus and have another verse, etc. There were a couple of lines in there where I remember stopping him and saying, "What are you singing?" When he told me, I thought, I don't know what you're talking about. So, for example, I've got the words here. Do you know? Right. Good vibes, I'm down. Good pith, an ounce. We're talking actually about weed. Chilling out and blowing clouds. I hope, it's very innocent. But I didn't know that. So that was quite interesting. You learn something new every day. And there it is in the song. And it's a very chilled, kind of fun, laid back summer song, straight up and down. Okay, so alongside the fact there are tons of words, it added then to the complexity of recording and then mixing it, because we had a few different runs through of recording the lyrics, or doing the vocal, and so then I ended up with bits of vocals from different occasions where we'd gone through and recorded it all, wanting to keep some from one recording and then add to that some that worked better from another recording. But all the way through the song, there's harmonies and other voices coming in, and there's the lead, and so actually mixing this required sitting with a cold flannel over my forehead and just trying to make sure that all the bits that you need to hear have real clarity, have presence, and are right up there, up front, and you can really kind of hear them without having to kind of strain. So I think it's done the job. It's I would say one other thing. This kind of complies with something that I think is happening more and more, which is songs on Spotify, and therefore kind of everywhere, tend to, more than ever, have no intro. They just come in, they just start. You hear, or at least at the very beginning, you hear something that is you probably hear some kind of vocal, even if it's some kind of, echoed vocal that's you're gonna hear more of later in the song. So what we did here, we had a little discussion about trying to kind of come into the song pretty fast and get moving right into it. And I think I do this more and more with my own songs as well, is try not to have a nice extended, intro, because it's one of the reasons that people switch off and, move on to the next track is people don't seem to have any patience for anything that is particularly instrumental, particularly not at the beginning of the song. You've got to grab people, bring them in, and the vocal is often the way to do that. So you'll notice when you hear this is that it just starts straight away. There's a little tease of some melody you're going to hear later on, and then we're into the song. So I think I better just play the damn thing to you. As I say, 4th of the Goldhawk Foxes songs. There will be more. There are plenty more. There will be an album at some stage. And we've even been talking about how fabulous it would be if we could get our asses out there to, perform live. Maybe start at some open mic type things. Even that'd be quite interesting. And then, see how far we can go with that. So that would be really exciting, and definitely worthwhile. So I hope you like the track. I'm going to leave you with it, and we'll talk again next week. Next week, I think next week is one of my own tracks. It's going to be the 3rd of my new series of songs coming out next week, but we'll worry about that next week. And then I'm going to fill you in on some other little developments that are taking off elsewhere, because there's been some action, but we'll leave that, as I say, for another week. I'm going to just tease you with it now. Certainly this adventure is getting interesting because it's actually going off in some directions that I'm not in control of and that I didn't expect, and it's fun. I think basically the more you do, the more you give yourself the opportunity that something interesting, unexpected, and unpredictable might happen. So there we go. That's all I'm going to say at this stage. It's been lovely. You're looking well, by the way, and I hope you have a lovely summer generally. Don't worry about the terrible cost of living crisis that's going to crush everybody in the winter. Have a lovely holiday and don't think about those things. And I'll talk to you next week. Here's the song. Bye-bye.
New exciting limits now. I got it all lined up, I got it all worked out. I'm gonna make you bop, I'm gonna make you bounce. Gonna do more than drip drop, I got a sauce, no doubt. I am a boy on top, I'm coming with the town, and I ain't gonna sell out now. Good vibes, I'm down. Good pit for now. Chilling out and blowing clouds. I'm gonna be straight up and down. I don't say this to impress, I'm just hoping to express that I'm nothing like the rest. There's no one around from north, east, south and west to contest if I am the best. I'm gonna make you make that sound. When you scream on my request, give me more and never less. Your desires you confess. I'll tell you what we found. From one night happiness, no strings and no stress. Tonight I'ma be free. I'm gonna let you know when you're pleasing me. Take turns in control and share the lead. Go ahead and let me know what your body needs. So tell me, can I come over? Stop by. Get to see you, as we move closer. feel your body heat. I'm gonna be straight up and down. Say it's to impress. I'm just hoping to express that I'm nothing like the rest. There's no one around. North, east, south, and west to contest if I am the best. I'm gonna make you make that sound. Scream on my request. More and never less. Desire to confess. Want my happiness, no strings and no stress. Just gonna get my back secured, leave the streets, head straight to yours. Yes, you're thirsty for sure. On the phone with a moan saying hurry home. I'm going as fast as I can, just hold tight, wait for you, man. Soon I'll be coming into land, you'll be doing as I planned. A hot minute overdue to let me in it. Any way you wanna spin it, I'm down. See your void and I can feel it. Show you new exciting limits now. Up and down. Hoping to express nothing like the rest. One around. Stop and rest to contest that I am the best. Make that sound. People never learn, no desire to rest. What we found. No strings and no stress. A hot minute overdue to let me in it. Any way you wanna spin it, I'm down. See your void and I can feel it. Show you new exciting limits now. Show you new exciting limits now.